And hello everyone, welcome to 30 Minutes Thursday Tea Time at 3:30. Another episode of our sessions where we go as far as we can to avoid long and boring Zoom seminars. Later on, we're going to hear from two great solution partners from our portfolio, talking about how to drive alignment for strategic initiatives and how a company in Gateshead is helping some of the largest companies in the world identify and really understand customer experiences. As ever, we're delighted in the support from the lovely folk at our sponsors Investec, Hayes McIntyre and Lewis Silkin, and would be happy to connect you so you can benefit from their vast knowledge to help you. First of all, for those who don't know us, we help corporates deliver results with our portfolio of solutions. How do we do it? Simple. We have the experience derived from being old and battle weary whilst remaining digitally savvy to filter out unsuitable vendors attacking you from all angles. We speak your language, so can translate the confusing babble from vendors so it makes sense to you. We cut through the crap to build a curated portfolio of fabulous solutions from scale-ups across the globe, used by folk from Pepsi to Yahoo to Boots to Unilever. And we've built up a band of over 50 senior C-suite executives across Europe and the US to help us deliver. One company which has delivered exceptionally well in these times is Snap, purveyor of the exceptionally popular Snapchat. 2 weeks ago, they announced figures beating all the analysts' predictions, showing 52% year-on-year revenue growth, with user numbers increasing to 249 million a day, up 18% year-on-year. The market has rewarded them with their shares going up 50% in the last fortnight. A major contributor to their success is Claire Velotti, who's their VP of International. Claire, we're delighted you could join us today. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Alex, for having me. And I'm definitely not going to say I've contributed to much of that success. I definitely can't take the credit, but it's great to see the momentum our business has at the moment.
Definitely. Now, something which surprised me when we were talking about this is you don't see yourselves as a social media company. So how would you pitch Snapchat?
Yeah, it's something that comes up a lot when I get asked questions around Snapchat in terms of it being social media. And the reason why, as a company, we feel quite strongly about not being positioned like that, because I always have to have a mini history lesson. If you go back 9 years ago when Evan and Bobby, who founded the company, built it, it was actually built at a time when social media was becoming very prevalent. Everyone was kind of very much leaning into it, but it was becoming quite a pressure cooker. And they were at college at the time and started to see this kind of curated version of people's lives they were creating and wanted to actually create an antidote to social media as such. And they really built Snapchat as a way to be the kind of fastest way to communicate to your real friends and family, and felt very strongly it wasn't about creating a social graph of everyone that sort of you connect with online. It was more about talking to your real friends and family. And the reason why you often will hear us talk about being a camera company is because we opened up to the camera, because the camera is enabling that conversation. You're talking using visuals, video and images. And that's why we often, you'll hear us talk about this, the camera being so key to our business.
Fabulous. Okay, so you position yourselves in that way. How do you find brands are using Snapchat then? How are they engaging with your audiences?
One thing we did very early on is we wanted to give brands an opportunity to be authentic on the platform. And I know that word gets overused in our industry, but what I mean by that is when we were creating advertising formats as such, we didn't believe they should be different to what our community was using. So for example, a video would be, you know, what we call a snap ad. It feels and looks the same as that, the organic, the native experience. Same with augmented reality. You open up to the camera and there's a carousel, and branded AR would be part of that carousel. And in some cases, actually a lot of cases, the branded activity did better, because actually a lot of the organic stuff was stuff that people had seen, that they'd seen frequently, but the branded activity was new. And that's something we really prided ourselves in the early days of building an advertising ecosystem that added value to the community. And so when I think about brands and how they use it, they really use it in, again, a very natural way that is authentic to our community. So you see a variety of brands. It could be performance advertisers who are trying to drive obviously a sale or an install, and they're using it really to drive that action, and tending to focus on kind of video formats to do that. But increasingly we're finding the engagement you can get from augmented reality to be incredibly powerful. We kind of call that AR for DR. And then you've got the brand advertisers who are really trying to sort of use Snapchat as a storytelling platform, because that's ultimately why people come on the platform, to talk and tell their stories to the people that matter to them. And the brands who understand that are the ones that are creating that dialogue, whether it's through using augmented reality and the video. But we're finding the brands that understand that, and also the brands that understand Snapchat's very much about the moment, i.e. when you're out and about, Snapchat actually enhances that experience. You tend to kind of lean into an experience through Snapchat. So the brands that understand that are also the brands that are very current. An example would be when COVID hit, when the pandemic really hit it, kind of when it was at its height, the highs. In April, we had one partner, Adidas. They created a very quick filter, which was all about, you know, staying at home. Or we had a grocer running augmented reality to demonstrate to our community what 2 meters look like, what did it feel like. And I think it's those brands that are in tune with what's going on in today's world, because that's what our community cares about, but then using the technology or the experience within Snapchat to bring that to life.
Okay, got you. And can you sort of tell me a bit more about sort of consumers' behaviour and how you would see them engaging with Snapchat? And also, what is the demographic? I mean, we talk about millennials, but I suspect that users of Snapchat's rather broader than that.
Yeah, I mean, it really varies by country, essentially. But based on our Q2 earnings that you referred to at the beginning, we're at 249 million daily active users. So that's a huge number of people coming back every single day. It really varies by market, but I would say on average, we reach 80% of 13 to 24-year-olds in a lot of our core markets. So it's got huge reach. And in quite a few of our markets, we are bigger than some of the obvious competitors, particularly in certain demographics. And actually then you've got anomalies, like I always like to call out. In Norway, 46% of our audience are over 35 years of age. So a lot of people make assumptions about our user base, but actually it continues to grow, and it continues to evolve as they kind of grow with us and essentially age up as well.
And presumably that can only make you more attractive to corporates as that happens. Do you see corporates tend to use you for long periods of time, or do they use you more tactically dipping in and out?
I would say at the beginning it was more tactically, and we often, if I'm honest, was candid, we used to sit in a lot of innovation budgets. But I think what we've worked really hard in is really investing in demonstrating real business value. So as time's gone on, I think more and more, how you define them, corporates tend to use us to hopefully kind of solve their business challenges. So it isn't about just a campaign and a campaign burst. Of course, there are clients, brands that do that, and I think they do that with a lot of their platforms. That's maybe their approach. But I'm a real believer, given what I've said about our daily active users, you know, people come to our platform, it's incredibly sticky because they're coming to talk to their real friends. And imagine at the height of the pandemic, you no surprise, some of our stats, like we saw 50% increase in video calling on the platform, like it was used more than ever in an even more stickier way. And I think the brands that recognize that realize it isn't something you just dip in and dip out of. It's about, you know, how do you have an augmented reality strategy? Because people on our platform use AR, they don't even call it AR, they just use it as a way to kind of talk and kind of create. And I think the brands that recognize and value that are the ones that think more long term. Okay.
So, I mean, on to sort of innovation, how does Snap approach innovation, and how do you task yourselves to stay ahead of folk?
I think the big thing is not to focus on what everyone else is doing. I think there was a period of time, quite a few years back, when a lot of people focused on other companies replicating some of the work, the formats we had created. And actually our mantra as a company has always been about stay focused on adding value to our community, because that's what matters and that's what will enable you to stay ahead. If you get distracted by what everyone else around you is doing, then you lose that edge of driving innovation. The other thing about, I know in our industry we use innovation, the word innovation a lot, but we're a real believer in it's about taking data and understanding what your community want, if you're providing them a service ultimately, and then also thinking about your philosophy and your values when you're building. So it isn't just about innovation for innovation's sake. we have some really key philosophies when we build. You know, we're very much focused on, you know, I say human-centric design, i.e. the fact we think about it's kind of people over tech. It's not just about building technology or an AI platform. It's about thinking about actually leading with that human kind of insight first and foremost. And then the other one is, which I think is very important to just call out, is thinking about safety and privacy by design, because I think in the world we're in today, our consumers expect that of us, and we have a responsibility to think about that before we even think about the innovation. So everything we do, I think, is quite unique, because we are, I mean, we were voted the most innovative company last year. But we have quite an important filter we put onto those innovations, which is actually being very human and equally putting the values that we believe are key to our community at the forefront.
So it's not innovation just for innovation's sake?
Absolutely not. And when you're innovating at the scale we are, if you think about the numbers we're talking about, people using our service, we can't. It has to be additive. Otherwise, to be honest, it just simply will fail.
Yeah, yes. So obviously the last 6+ months have been pretty weird. I mean, what sort of changes have you seen in terms of behaviour or the way you guys work as a company, etc.?
I think we were fortunate because I think as a tech company, we worked in quite a fast-paced, agile, and of course, like even in my role that's international, I spent a lot of my time on VCs before the pandemic happened. So it wasn't a huge shift. And I think we were able to, as a company, move very quickly to a work from home way of working, just because our business was so agile and so like ready to shift to the likes of we use Google Hangouts. So I don't think that was difficult for us. I think the bit that we still think a lot about, and I don't think anyone's really got the answers. How do you still maintain that level of creativity as a team in a world where we are all working from home? And as much as we can do a lot through screens, you do miss sometimes those moments of creativity that just happen a bit more spontaneously in an office environment. So I think it's fair to say we haven't got all the answers. I think we've been very fortunate that we could translate the business quickly to remote working. But equally, it has come with some challenges. And I think it's really important to maintain those connections, particularly to drive creativity, which I think is a challenge for a lot of businesses.
Definitely. Well, look, first of all, thank you so much for your contribution. It's a really thought-provoking comments and really useful for us. I think what I'd love to do now is bring in Marie, if I may. Marie is from one of our solutions partners. If I can get the screen to work. I hate it when this happens. Don't you love this sort of magic when it happens?
As long as I come off the big screen, Alex, it'll all be good.
You'll be coming off the big screen, don't worry. You'll be coming off at any moment now. There we go. Hopefully. There we go. So Claire, once again, thank you so much. We will now move on to Marie. Marie, tell us more about Qvest, please.
Thank you, Alex. I will. So here's what we do with Qvest. We are all about helping large companies secure strategic alignment. So strategic alignment is when strategy and execution are in sync. Our conviction is that the lack of strategic alignment is actually the most expensive and the most serious problems organizations face today. It's the biggest risk you face as a leader, because if your organization is not aligned, you really cannot deliver. So any leader knows how hard it is to get everyone on the same page working towards the same goal. And with COVID, this problem is intensified because you just can't gather people physically. Normally, when we are working on strategic alignment, we bring people together and use tools like town halls, interviews, workshops, and so on, and also surveys. The problem is that those solutions are really labor intensive, and they don't scale. So, and of course, COVID makes it even harder to do all of that stuff. We have then designed Qvest as a digital tool to deliver strategic alignment. What you see here is actually what you get out of Qvest. So it's possible for you to collect data from a large population of employees. You get advanced analytics and automatic reporting that happens in the platform in PDF or PowerPoint. You can involve your employees and engage in conversations that also capture their individual perspectives. And then you map the behavioral data in a network graph. And as a leader, when you set up a Qvest, it's also the communication of a strategic direction. Ultimately, using the tool builds a curious and proactive culture in your organization. So I know that that's a lot. I've sort of promised you a rose garden, but let us just go to how it actually works. The platform is standalone, and it works by first a leader setting up a frame, a topic that you want to Qvest about. And that could, for example, be our new strategy in food and beverage, but it can be anything. That's the first step. The second step is that the employees who are invited to participate in the Qvest exchange questions and answers one-on-one, horizontal, peer-to-peer for a period of, say, 3 days. It can be, in this example, we have 250 people for 3 days. Then the last and the third step is that the conversational and behavioral data generated through the Qvest is actually then shared and available both in an in-depth dashboard and also as automatic download and reports for communication and so on. When you do this digital process, the outcome that you get is that you have you anchor your strategy in everyday action. So you cross the implementation gap, and you know how your teams interpret the strategy. It's possible for you to measure the progress towards implementation. And lastly, speaking of Agile, it's possible to make data-driven adjustments based on what you learn in the Qvest. We work with large, complex organizations and help them get traction on their most important strategic initiatives. And that was the very brief introduction to Qvest.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Marie. Claire, any questions for Marie?
Yeah, Marie, it's just interesting because what you're doing is pretty groundbreaking. It'd be lovely to sort of hear, have you got any kind of metrics or anything you could share that demonstrates sort of the value, the ROI that you've been able to deliver for the companies that work with you?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so two stats I would like to share. We have one large distributed public organization that has been using Qvest on a monthly basis with the same population, and they have actually seen a 43% increase in their network strength as we measure it. And that's all good and well, but what's actually really cool is that when we talk to them, they say it's not only in Qvest that our network strength and collaboration is stronger, we experienced it outside as well. So this influence of using the tool actually goes into how they work in everyday work. So that is really, really cool. We also see, another example is a company that ran a large implementation with Qvest, and they actually saw, they did both a survey and used Qvest on the same population, on the same topic. And they had 330% more people engagement in the Qvest. So the fact that it's actually really fun to Qvest, and there's a certain survey fatigue out there, we're tired of surveys, we don't want to just respond to questions somebody else has asked, gives us a leg up, and then all the great data you get out of it, of course. So those were two examples.
Thank you. Alex, so I have time for another question.
You do indeed, yep. There's probably room for a couple more. I'll let you know.
Good. I'm just curious because obviously, you know, I feel like we can't have conversations and not mention the pandemic. I'd love to understand, like, what's been the impact, given, you know, how much you can have a sort of a meaningful impact with the understanding employees, but what are you seeing the impact of the pandemic's having on these companies?
Yeah. So I think there's, again, sort of two elements. Our biggest competitor, if you will, is business as usual. And a lot of these large corporations, they actually rely very heavily on in-person interactions. They're not that digital. And then sort of boom, March 8th, it's just not possible. So business as usual out the window. And all of a sudden, you know, we are the only choice for having strategic discussions with a large group. So that's of course really great. But I think, so that's sort of the practical, we can't do as we usually did. But then in the mindset, what we see is that through the experience of actually managing through the pandemic and going virtual so easily as many companies really did, you know, all of a sudden people figured out how to use all kinds of tools. That is also a really great thing for us, because where Qvest used to be a little bit like, why do we want to do it digitally, or can our employees figure it out? Nobody asks that anymore. So now they're just looking for solutions like what we provide. So I think that shock and then adaptation is what I saw.
And building on that, I mean, the importance of culture in companies has never been so important. So I'm assuming, I'd love to know, like, what's the effect when companies use Qvest on the culture?
Yeah, and I loved what you said about Snapchat setting out to reinvent the social media, because the social media ended up actually being harmful in the way that it was designed. And I think there's a strong affinity to what we're doing there, because we really believe that the tools you use shape your reality and shape your humanity. So if we're not careful with how we design the tools to actually promote the behavior and the culture we want, we shoot ourselves in the foot. So for us, it's really, really important that it's human one-to-one interactions, thoughtful questions and answers you exchange in Qvest, so that nurtures that culture. We talk about a proactive and a curious culture. That's what you want, because that's what you need to solve your business problems. So the tools you use with your employees should be nurturing that culture of being proactive and curious. It's one-to-one, but actually, it seems very obvious when I say it, but actually when we just drown our employees in surveys or big meetings where they just sit as passive listeners, it fosters something we don't want. So
Marie, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you very much. At this stage, I'd love to bring in our second speaker, Pete from Wordnerds. Wordnerds has been in our portfolio for, why is this not working? In our portfolio for quite some time now. We love them. Pete, tell us a bit about what you're up to at the moment.
Thanks, Alex. Good afternoon, old people. Good afternoon to their young friends. So we're Wordnerds. The problem we solve is that nobody is listening to their customers. And the reason for that is that 80% of the world's data exists in the form of unstructured text in social media, in customer complaints, on surveys, reviews, and in news and online. And the software that has been developed to help you make sense of this is rubbish. It's great at handling a bunch of marketing campaigns, or it's fantastic at dealing with the data, the quantitative data around words. But it doesn't tell you what the words say. Word clouds suck. They are the most insidious invention humans have ever come up with. Sentiment scores are entirely useless. What do I care if somebody's -2 or somebody's +3? And social is just one voice. Words exist in so many other different forms. And the reason they haven't historically been good at the words bit is because language is weird. It is sarcastic, fluid, it changes all the time. The young people use it very differently to older people. It's regional and misspelt in so many hilarious ways. Above all else, it's contextual. The word outstanding is super positive. Well, here's something for you. Outstanding debt is not very positive at all. It's the worst type of debt that there is. Sharp is a wonderful thing if you're wearing a suit. It's less good on a baby toy. You can take all of the same words, you can shuffle them up in a different order, and it means something completely different. This water tastes like crap. Water companies love that. They get fined from taste and odor problems. This crap tastes like water. Almost certainly somebody trying American lager. Nothing has changed there in the presence of the words. It's all about the way that they interact with each other and relate. So what are we doing about that? Well, Wordnerds is a SaaS platform that actually tells you what people think. We combine brand new cutting edge natural language processing, AI, machine learning, all that good data science stuff with old school dusty library corpus linguistics. And we do that to give you two things. What people are saying in a particular data set, the unknown unknowns, the most talked about, the most interesting themes, and what people are saying related to a specific context of yours, related to something that you care about, a question or a hypothesis. And that allows some of the world's biggest brands to do some really interesting things. So right at the start of the pandemic, we were working with National Institute for Health Research on trying to identify symptoms of COVID. And it was our data that led to them understanding that loss of taste and smell was one. And off the back of that, the official NHS advice was updated back in April 2020. People use it for saving time and money. One of our big Bay Area clients in the States do quarterly NPS data trawls with their customers. They managed to generate 230 hours of manual coding in looking at this data, and that's across 15,000 data points. We've just made that process instantaneous using our platform, saving over 100 grand a year in person hours and massively increasing their ability to sample a lot more data from wider areas of the world. Finally, a really important use case for us is real-time monitoring of services and products. So Nissan use our product for detecting problems with new cars 2 weeks before their dealer network. Tommy Tippy have redesigned their flagship Perfect Prep machine off the basis of some Amazon review data that we found some issues with. And water companies are using our software to help use their customers as sensors for issues with their network, detecting leaks up to a day before they're reported through official channels, and saving money and the environment at the same time.
Pete, thank you very much. Claire, any questions?
This is a topic close to my heart because over the years, I think this has always been a challenge in terms of understanding the consumer, and there have obviously been a lot of listening tools out there. And what I love is yours clearly is quite unique and really does understand the biggest challenges. But there's one area that I think is fascinating because obviously most brands want to know what's coming or how to tackle sort of what their consumers are thinking in terms of the next month or the next couple of months. How do you tackle that? Because obviously listening tools are so focused on what's been said.
Great question. Yeah, so listening as a lagging indicator or a leading indicator. So we're doing some interesting stuff with Sage at the moment around employee engagement, where they're going through online training, and at the end of every module, they're putting in what they thought about that module, concepts they struggled with, things they want to learn that weren't covered. And what we're beginning to do is look at the attainment at the end of that training to see who really thrived, who failed, and at what point we can segment the data to see when people are showing indications that they are on the trajectory to get a distinction or being on the trajectory to fail. And using unstructured text data predictively is something that being able to understand it in mass is now starting to let us allow us to do, and use some of the good machine learning techniques to do it that we've been doing with numbers for decades now.
Wow, very impressive. The other area that's interesting is that I think language evolves very quickly, particularly with kind of, I think about the Generation Z millennials. So how do you keep up as well with kind of all the different, the new types of language or expressions that get used?
It's really interesting as well. So one of the interesting things about COVID is the word furlough was in none of our lexicons in February, but by March we were all bandying it around like some kind of NHS Supremo. We do some stuff with, I mentioned Nissan. They've got a product called the Nissan Juke, J-U-K-E. One day, an American hip hop artist called Juke, J-U-K-E, went to the top of the hip hop charts, and their feed became all schnizzle manizzle. And what's hilarious is how quickly the AI can adapt to that because of our linguistic lens. So because we understand how the structure of language works, we can see the words that are being used in similar contexts to other words, and the AI can then make that leap itself. So it could see that the word furlough was being used interchangeably with laid off or redundant or stuff like that. So it had a starting point from which to guess about meaning. So this is all stuff that AI is becoming much better at dealing with itself. But at the end of the day, it doesn't replace humans, and we do every now and then need some human input in training that data in the first instance.
Brilliant. I need to stop you there, but could I sort of thank everyone so much for their participation today. Claire, you were fabulous. We've learned a lot more about authenticity and understanding how you approach innovation and safety and privacy by design. Qvest told us about how their tool drives employee alignment and buy-in for strategic change. And Wordnerds explained that whilst language is weird, they can make sense of it to help brands unearth known unknowns and unknown unknowns. If you've missed any of our previous sessions, they are available, so let us know and we will send you a link. Otherwise, our next event is on Thursday, the 3rd of November at 3:30, where we've got the CTO of Sainsbury's and 2 of our solution partners. If you need to get in touch with us, bingo@greyhairworks.com. Thanks, Investec, Lewis Silkins and Hayes McIntyre, and of course, you lovely lot for coming along. I hope it's useful, and catch up with you next month. And once again, thank you, everyone else. You've been fab. Catch you all soon.